our next speaker. Weayonnoh, sorry, I practiced that too. Weayonnoh Nelson Davies, Executive Director of the Economic Progress Institute. Her legal expertise, along with her commitment to social, racial, and economic justice, make her a formidable advocate. I know that those in the 14-year struggle against predatory lending were delighted by the feature in the Rhode Island Current, where Weayonnoh described her experience of taking on the powers that be. Awesome. So please, may we all follow her example. Let's welcome Weayonnoh, please, to our stage.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me here, and I'm glad I've made some friends, especially around payday lending, so I'm really happy to be here with you all. I also have to share that Caroline Mark is the woman who hired me at EPI. She was the board chair when I was hired, and I remember, I think it was a Friday morning, and the consultant sent me a message and said, "Are you available to take a call from Caroline today?" And I was waiting to hear back. And so I told her, if it's bad news, I'm really busy today. I have no time to speak with her. If it's good news, I'm open all day. And she's like, pick up your phone. And so the rest have been history. I've been at EPI since 2022, and it's been the great joy of my life. I also want to acknowledge my Director of Research and Fiscal Policy, Alan Krinsky, who is also the co-chair of the Payday Lending Reform Coalition. And so when you're asking questions, Alan is here to join me to answer those questions. Defending democracy. I want to talk about that a little bit before I dive into payday lending, because it's part of EPI's value. Active democracy is one of the values we have, in addition to equity, integrity, and excellence. But active democracy for me is very personal. And so that's the reason why I got a little wild up around payday lending and sort of saw it through a democracy lens. Some people already know my history, but I decided I wanted to be a social justice attorney at 12. And it was back in Africa, in Liberia, during a civil war. And I wanted to because leaders were the ones who were destroying lives, pulling children to serve as child soldiers, and they were not accountable at all. And at 12, I was like, someone needs to be accountable. Our future is being taken away. There's definite destruction, and it's the people in charge who's making that happen. And for me, my role model at 12, the reason I wanted to be a lawyer, once I have this voice I got from my father. I decided why not use it for something. But then Nelson Mandela, because I grew up in Africa, and Nelson Mandela for me was this man who spent 27 years in jail fighting for what he believed in against apartheid. And one of his famous quotes is talking about the ideal of democracy. And he talked about the ideal of democracy is something that he lives for, but if needs be, is something he's willing to die for. And I was 12-year-old Weayonnoh saying, I am willing to die for that ideal of democracy. And so when I came to the US, and my father sent me here when I was 16 to escape the war, I joined City Year, Rhode Island, after high school. And that's where, again, I sort of refound myself with young people serving. And I couldn't vote. I was 17, but besides that, when I turned 18, I still couldn't vote because I had an immigration status, temporary protected status. And for years, I could not vote. But I remember I joined City Year, and Matt Brown, and some people may know Matt Brown. He was former Secretary of State and ran for governor, was the executive director when I was in City Year. And in 2000, he founded this organization called Democracy Compact. And it was to increase voter participation in Rhode Island. And I was a 20-year-old college student at Rhode Island College, and he pulled me in to be one of his field campaign managers. And he pulled me in because Matt Brown had heard me speak up for what I believe in since I was 17. And he said, I think we need your voice in this campaign. One, to let young people know that they are a part of democracy, and to share your story that even though you cannot vote, you understand how powerful democracy is. And so I joined that, and I remember that whole summer really spending time diving in and talking to young people about they have a privilege that I don't have, but I need them to use that privilege. So democracy is something that has stood with me for a very long time. I met my husband that same year, actually, and we started dating in 2001. And he came in as a refugee, got his citizenship a few years later. And I was on this immigration status that when the president decides whether he will renew it, he does. If not, you don't know whether you're going to be sent back home. And I remember I started law school, and my husband, when I was citizen, he said, we need to get married, girl. You don't know if you're going to go. I was like, no, I'm married for love. You are not marrying me to make me a green card wife. He was like, come on, girl, we're in love, let's get married. But I was like, no, I didn't want to marry on that urgency of to make me stay. So I played it hard to get. And I graduated from law school and actually sold in to be a lawyer on temporary protective status. But at that time, he engaged me. I was like, okay, 7 years now, this guy loves me, let's do it. But I did get my green card through this husband of mine. And in 2013, I finally became a U.S. citizen. Yay. Thank you. And my first election was in 2014. And I understood the power of walking in that day for the first time in my life, even though I've been fighting for democracy since 12, to finally cast my vote. And so democracy for me, when I came to EPI, it drew me in because I've been a social justice attorney for 14 years before coming to EPI. So my whole life is devoted to social justice, to serving the people, to holding leadership accountable. And so when I came to EPI, it was a gift that was given to me to do all of that from upstream. Look at policy and look at leaders directly and deal with them to say, we are here as an organization doing policy, doing research to hold you accountable to the ideals of democracy. And so for me, it's a full circle moment to be in this place. So just to lay for you a little bit of the background as to why it's personally important to me, but it's an important ideal and value of the organization I have the gift of leading. And so in 2002, when I was ED, Margot Morrisseau, who some of you, if you've been working on paid lending, know Margot have been fighting for this for 15 years, was the intern director at EPI when I came in. And when she was, and I knew her from City Year actually, so we were in City Year together. And Margot came to me and Alan and said, I want EPI to co-lead this coalition, to really try to push for paid lending reform. It was we have so many coalitions that we're already involved in, working for workers and children and families, so that was gonna be something extra we had to take on and lead. And I said, but I think it's an important issue, because we're talking about the most vulnerable people in Rhode Island who are being taken advantage of when they need help the most by paid lenders, and then they have to pay almost 261% in interest rates. I felt that was an important issue that our voice needed to be added to. And so Alan agreed and said, okay, I have all these fiscal, I have the budget to talk about and taxing the wealthiest Rhode Islanders to talk about, but I will take on this issue as well and co-lead this coalition along with Margot. And so 2022, EPI had been very active in the paid lending coalition. So I'll take a step back to talk a little bit about why this issue is important and what has happened in the last 2 years, bringing us to where we are. Paid lenders in the state of Rhode Island, and some people, how many people already know a little bit about paid lending? Okay. So for those who do not know, they come out as sort of creditors to help people who do not have good credits, who have low income, and what they do is, we'll take back the money we borrow you to fix your car or deal with an emergency, and then you pay us back when you take pay. But over the years, what they've done is every time someone borrows money for them, they'll change, maybe it's $500 you borrow and they charge you $10 interest. And then 2 weeks later, if you need $500 to pay for car repair, in 2 weeks, you probably still need $500, right? And so knowing that, they actually put together a business plan that rely on the fact that that person is not gonna be able to pay back that $500 in the next week or next 2 weeks when they take pay. And so, we'll help you, sure. We're just gonna give it back to you to borrow it again, and then we're at another $10. And so now you owe us $20 interest. And it goes on and on and on with a business plan specific to make sure that you keep on going back and the interest rate keeps going on to almost 260%. So So that is the issue, right? That's one of the issues. The other issue is they are the only lenders in the state of Rhode Island that are allowed to do that because we have a loophole in our rules. And so they've been allowed to do that for many years. And so every year for the last 15 years, advocates have gone and say, this is wrong. One, they have an unfair advantage that other businesses do not have. They are capped at 36%. Payday lenders can go on and on over 200%. And two, they are targeting people who cannot afford these interest rates, and they're going at people at the most vulnerable stage. It's simply wrong. Everyone in the state of Rhode Island almost seems to say it is wrong. We don't have a debate about people saying it is not wrong. When we show up at the State House, for those of you who showed up to testify, the only people in the room testifying against reforming that were the payday lenders themselves. Everyone else, and we had 2 to 3 pages worth of testimony on the day we show up this year, and all of us were in that room saying it is wrong, you need to change it. And yet and still, 15 years later, it has not changed. So why is that? Right, so we've been trying to figure why is that. And with my lawyer hat, I came here and be like, have we given them the data? Have we proved our case? Yes, we have. Are there alternatives? Maybe people in Rhode Island who have alternatives. Have we talked to alternatives? Yes. We have a list of alternatives. We provided it. Okay. Do we have stories of people who have been impacted by payday lending? Yes. We even had a senior policy analyst from KissCount share her story this year. Do we have support? Yes, we have support. And this year, to demonstrate we had support, we had a public letter. And in that letter, every statewide general elected officer signed that letter. The governor, the lieutenant governor, secretary of state, treasurer, the attorney general signed, and over 300 people, and some of you are now in this room, signed to say, we want this gone. It is not right to have alternatives. It's an injustice. Yet we were ignored. And so why is this a democracy issue? And Susie raised the issue. For years, we go to the State House, the committees are saying, we're for it. Legislators say, we want this, we will vote. So we have the votes. That's the other thing, you never know if you have the votes. We've had the votes. Last year, House of Representatives signed a letter saying we want the votes, and finally really pushed pressure for the Speaker to bring it to the floor, and we got a House vote for the first time in this 14 years campaign at that time last year. So we have the votes. But we cannot get this on the House or Senate floor now. And so we've been wondering, what is the issue? And for me, I'm like, we have dotted every I, we've crossed every T to explain why this issue is important, to explain almost everyone we talk to in the state of Rhode Island wants this gone and taken care of, but yet and still it cannot happen. And so we weren't getting answered. Last year we got the House votes and went to the Senate and was like, oh, the House passed it too late, and it did it on purpose to make us look at the bad guys, right? So that was the argument. And the House was like, no, they could have passed our bill. So we had this little dance last year with both houses blaming each other as to why it didn't pass. So I'm like, okay, let's start early this year then. Let's do the public letter, let's do all of these things. And then it became a strong democracy issue because at the end I was like, we need to apply pressure. We've done everything else. I'm a diplomat at heart, but I'm also a fighter of justice. I come from democracy as an ideal I will fight for. And so it's like this dance, we are expert organization, we provide research, we show up as experts, but we're also advocates. And I'm like, I think it's time to turn up our advocate knob a little bit, because I don't think they're listening to our expert testimony anymore. And so when we started thinking about how to apply pressure, some of our allies were sent with a message to us saying, it will be disastrous for your organization if you keep pushing that. And we're in a church, so I'm not going to tell you what that did to me. But that was like, for me, it's like I come out of threats. I come out of you will lose your life if you do not do what lawyers say. And so for me, I think the effect that I think leaders thought it was going to have had the wrong effect. And I called the co-leaders, I'm like, it's time to push back. Because one, you cannot threaten people who are fighting for you to simply do the right thing. I don't need you to vote for payday lending reform. I simply need you to step out of the way and let democracy decide. And that was my statement to leaders saying, let democracy decide, bring the votes to the floor. Yet they refuse to do that. And so I also asked, I got a message it would be disastrous. Maybe it's a myth. Sometimes people create these legends of things that are not true, and maybe you all have the wrong repetition in the community that you will do something or punish people or punish legislators if they don't do your way. Is that true? Maybe people are lying on your name. So confirm for me that that is not true, or if it's true, tell me why in the United States, in Rhode Island, will leaders threaten people who are trying to do the right thing? This is unreal. And I explained to them why for me that was personal, because my father sent me away at 16-year-olds to this land where I got to exercise what I always wanted to. And in Rhode Island, you're telling me to simply say bring a vote is something that we would get punished for? Doesn't seem to be right. Doesn't sit right with me. And so we're going to keep applying public pressure. And so for me, I think when Kate talked about the case of it, that's one issue. We advocate for so many different policy issues. We don't always win. We don't always get the vote. This for me was, you have the poorest Rhode Islanders without protection going and asking leaders to let democracy decide, and you're refusing and you cannot give us the right reason why. Payday lenders, it's a business. It's a multi-million-dollar business, but the interesting thing is the money goes out of state. So we're not even benefiting in the state of Rhode Island for their money that they're getting. Over $250,000 a month is leaving our state because we're not trying to increase reform in the state. And then the other thing is the payday lenders have a lobbyist that we seem that we cannot compete with. And that became the other issue. Is that the reason why? Can you tell us? It said, you have to do a favor. It said someone you respect. And that's why I was like, we are even giving you this public letter to say, look, we have been trying to hold it down for you for 15 years, but the public wanted our hands are tied. We're giving you what you need to answer whoever you need to answer to do the right thing. And yet, and still nothing was done. And I think and then I went on a little Twitter rant, I think that went to the Rhode Island Current article. EPI was founded on this principle. At the State House, at Congress, you have pay lobbyists that show up and advocate for the wealthiest Rhode Islanders, that advocate for cooperation. Linda Katz and the late Lindsay Gorod founded this organization in Rhode Island to ensure that all voices were heard at that state house and were prioritized. And that is the essence of what we're from, to say we are the people lobbyists. We may not have the cell phone number, we may not have access to leaders as other people do that can pay for fundraisers, but even for people who don't have money, they deserve dignity, they deserve respect, they deserve democracy to work for them as well. And that is why we're here, and we have to push, because without push, you will not listen to what their issues are. And so that was our charge, and we had to go push for that. And I went on Twitter, and I will explain this, because the week where we've been going back and forth with leadership, Citizens Bank threatened to leave, right, because of what they needed to keep them here. And state leaders responded and saying, we have to do this to show the business community we're listening to them. We have to do this to show we're competitive with Massachusetts that has passed payday lending reform forever. And within a couple of weeks, Citizens got what they wanted. And for me, that was a dagger in the heart, because for 15 years, we've been advocating for you to simply do the right thing. It took 2 weeks for you to do what you thought you needed to do for citizens, but you did not give that dignity and respect to the lowest members, as you see them the same, of your community, and that is simply wrong. And we have to when you talk about democracy, that is the point. You have to look at where are the gaps, who are ignored, and that's where you start when you preach for defending democracy. You have to start from there. Who always get left behind, and who will be just fine no matter what happens. And so this was one of the issues we worked on, and we pushed hard because we did see this as a democracy problem. We saw it as a problem of state leaders, one not allowing vote, blaming each other. And my other reason for going public was legislators were saying, I want to pass it, but leadership won. And I'm like, when the people vote you in, they vote you in. They don't vote you in, and I understand there's a culture there. That one of the things we're trying to figure out, what is the culture that legislators who are voted in by the constituents in their district go out there and say, we want to vote for something, but we can't. There's more of you. So what does it take to make you understand your power and make you understand that you are accountable to the people that vote you? And if all of you kept pushing at leadership and saying this is the right thing to do, and maybe test it out and see if you do the right thing, maybe you will actually achieve something. So that was also a push and saying you're blaming one person in the legislature. I'll call your bluff too. Is it that one person? And if it is, then we call that one person out. If it's not, then we call you out because you were voted and you also have a responsibility to do what people voted you into. And so all of it really became us testing what is the culture in the legislation. As we talk about, a lot of things are further studied from many years when there's nothing else left to study. That's the way of blocking votes. And that's an issue for us who want to pass policies and progressive policies. That is really a strong roadblock. Not just for us, it's a strong roadblock for legislators who want to do the right thing, but are fearful of not getting their bills passed, fearful for not getting leadership position. So we need to also think about, when we think of defending democracy, how do we create a structure that makes people willing to stand up for it and not be afraid to stand up for it? Because sometimes you need a little bit of courage, a little bit of bravery to stand up for it. So I'm going to pause there because I just want to give an overview, and then I can open it up for questions for the campaign, for EPI, what we do, how can you get involved, etc.
Yeah, payday lenders are not the only ones who play that game. If I get a parking ticket, if I don't pay it within the first 2 weeks, I guess it is, it doubles. That's 100% interest. And then another week or two, it doubles again. So is EPI pushing back against that kind of practices that the city does?
Well, we haven't looked at parking tickets, but you're right, there's a lot of things that keep people in poverty, and that's a good example of it. So the campaign is really focused on payday lending, but we've been talking a lot about predatory practices and consumer protection. So I don't know if Alan wants to chime in, but EPI has started beyond. We're trying to get this bill passed so we can really expand into predatory lending, because there's rent a bank, there's other schemes that are coming in this state that we want to protect against, and we can really look into the parking tickets as well, because consumer protection and how we keep people in poverty by adding these fees are something we've been looking at. Do you have anything to add?
Can I say something?
Yes.
There's a difference, though. Sorry.
That's okay.
Just, sir, there is a difference in that on the statute, on the Rhode Island law, there is legislation limiting the rates of interest that can be charged on loans. It's a standing law. That's why we all don't pay 260% on our car loans and our house loans. There is a law that limits it. There's no law, I don't think, about what is the example you raised. So in this case, it's a little different, although there are other instances of concern, as you rightly say.
Right.
But in this instance, it's a violation of a standing law. All banks, all lenders are subject to that law, except that this little loophole that Weayonnoh is working so hard in the Progress Institute, as you see. So that's the difference between, there's no, you get.
Yeah, and the loophole is because payday lenders are known as check cashers, right? Because they cash your check, sort of. So they sort of slip out of the other institutions that give up loans. So that is the loophole that they were able to get through and charge so much interest. Sorry, am I the one responsible? I'm like scared to choose who's okay.
Thank you, Lance. That, as I understand, the companies in the major part aren't even state companies, they're actually out of state. So all that money is being vacuumed somewhere else.
Correct.
Maybe you could speak to a little on that?
Yeah, Alan maybe might want to share. But yeah, there's the corporation, Advance America, is not a Rhode Island company. And so the profits they're making is going, and that's one of the things we highlighted and saying it's not even helping our Rhode Island economy. So why do we even still say it's not benefiting the economy at all? It's going out of state to a corporation that is not even in Rhode Island.
Well, I looked into this. The Advance America is not a Rhode Island company. The principal shareholder of Advance America is a Mexican billionaire that is perpetrating the same business model on the global south.
Yeah, thank you. And you shared that testimony, which was powerful.
hedge fund in Manhattan. It's
worse.
Okay, bottom line, is there a way to get this done?
Mm.
Or are we like banging our heads on the wall?
Right. No, thank you for that, because I wanted to sort of end with what's next. A couple of things I see, right? We are doing a lot that we can do, and we thought like this public thing of getting everybody in the state signed out was like, this is it. Like, they cannot go against it. Some things I cannot say because we're 501c3, we're nonpartisan. I think everyone have to talk to their legislators again and hold each legislator accountable, right? So we have to say, I know you're saying leadership, but if you're on a committee, I think we need to push harder on the committee. So that's one way to go. I think we have to build people power. Last year when we got sort of the threats, it was like, should we rally? Is this an issue where we need to build enough pressure? The media, I will say the media covered payday lending very hard this year. So we have that. We've been pushing, maybe we need to be in the media and have that. And I think that got their attention a little bit. So I think each legislator in the General Assembly needs to be held accountable. I think we have, in democracy, one thing I believe in is the power of the people. And so I think with this issue too, we need to build momentum around the state to have people pushing back, whether we come together at an event or throughout the state saying this issue must go now. That's one way. There has to be people who know leadership and have whatever influence they have with leadership to also push pressure that way that we may not. And we're putting pressure in a way we have some influence as the organization we are, but there's so much we can do. And so I think we need people who all in Rhode Island to really talk to leadership and say, you have to let this go. And we tried that. That's what we got the statewide officers to push. And I think we need to do some of that behind the same conversation, but we need to have a public forum and public conversation about this, because you cannot really create a lot of strong, powerful change in secret. And so I think we have to get out and be loud and be outspoken about this issue. So those are some things, and we'll be talking as a coalition about other ideas this year. And my time is up. Thank you.